Okay, this lesson for the Cornet Project class will discuss, has God decreed our moral actions or has he decreed the consequences of our moral acts? First of all, what are decrees? And I'll just write that over here. Davar in the Hebrew, for example. You can look it up. You can see it in the English decree, and it's actually term word. Then we have one we all know so well, logos, and its word. So do we have decrees? So we'll look at John 3:18 and notice the pattern and how a decree would be made. This says the one who is believing into him, this is speaking of the Son of God here, so the only begotten one, the one who is believing into him, the one who is believing into him is not krenetai. Yeah, krenetai. That's perfect. That's present active indicative. Present passive indicative is not being judged, not being judged. Notice the being judged. There we go. Then we go the one not believing. Then we have de, post-positive conjunction de, but the one not, draw a line there not to mix these things, but the one not believing There we go. So we have the one who is believing into him is not being judged, but the one not believing. And then we have it's perfect passive indicative. Reduplicated stem. Kretai. There we go. Has already, and the word already is actually in the text, a day, already. I think it was over here on this side. Has already been judged. And of course it's perfect. So, and continues or remains judged because, hoti, because may not, he has not, this is perfect indicative, perfect indicative, pistu, from pistuo, of course. Pistu can, yes, okay, here we go. He has not believed, has not believed, and of course, nor does he presently believe. Believe into that would be to onoma, into the name, to mono genus, into the name of the only genetic, this is an adjective here, son, son, to theou, of the God. So we don't see the decree to believe. We don't see the decree to disbelieve. We see the consequence of believing, and we see the consequence of not believing. So this is a decree. So you hear people talk about decrees a lot. Well, first define the word dabar, logos. Those are words. Jesus even used this in plural. He said, the one who would take his words, the wise man who built his house upon a rock. He said those words, so his decrees. And then we can look here in John 3:36. This is a very familiar one. The one who is believing, the one who is believing, who is believing, into ton weon, the Son. Eke is already having, we've seen that before, is already having zoane, life, onion, try to stay out of the way, life eternal. And it says, but the one who is negating persuasion, notice that alpha privative, it's negative particle. With the verbal, it's negating. And that's pathon. Again, present active participle, negating persuasion. And that's by the Son. So you have one who's believing into the Son. Now you have one negating persuasion by the Son, by the Yoda subscript there. We owe by the Son. And it says this one will not see life. Will not see life. Zoane. See how it's very parallel. See life. But rather, now that alpha, the letter A there, is dropped because when it's not, it doesn't occur when it's followed by another vowel there. So the wrath, but rather the wrath to theou of the God. Mene is already abiding. This is omitted also, this letter I here, upon him. So now these are both written the way we would understand a decree. So it's been decreed that the one who's believing into him is not being judged, but the one who is not believing has already been judged and continues to be judged because he has not believed, nor does he presently believe, into the name of the only genetic, misspelled genetic there, only genetic Son of the God. John 3:36, this is what John the Baptist said, the one who is believing into the Son is already having life eternal, but the one who is negating persuasion by the Son will not see life, but rather the wrath of the God is already abiding upon him. So this is where you might hear sometimes people debate about election, for example, and some say it's conditional upon belief. Well, this text has believing first. So if this were to say what we often hear taught, we have words for that. That is, the Bible is very precise. So if in any of these decrees God wanted to say, electos esten, for example. So the elect one is he who is believing into him, and it's he who is not being judged. But the non-elect one is decreed not to be believing and has already been judged. So we don't even have a word for non-elect. If you haven't noticed that, there's no such term like that. So if you've been arguing with someone about decrees, first remember what we were taught in the seminary, Dr. John Penn, hermeneutic holistic. Define your term. What are you saying? Then if someone's importing something into a decree, for example, these are decrees. And then the question is, well, do we have any decree somewhere where God decrees our moral actions? Or rather, do we have decrees where he decrees the consequences of our moral acts? So here we see this is very clear. Couldn't be written better. That is, the Bible couldn't be more precise. I remind you, mathematics came from the Bible. It's mathological. So if this was something that, as we constantly hear this endless, well, when you import something, you have to, it's called letterism when you overwork something. And I'm certainly not belittling anyone who practices that. We all can share biases and want to have our own lean. That's why I say if you just want to go to the text, however, which is the only thing I would give my interest to, is what does the text actually say? And it doesn't say anything about specifically. So the decree is the one who's believing into him is not being judged. So this is a good lesson. It's easy. So we can demonstrate, prove irrefutably that God does not decree our moral actions, rather the consequences. And you can write out decrees by example. And you may not hear these called decrees, but that's probably because the terms haven't quite been defined. But even Jesus used this in the plural form, referring to his words. So we can say his decrees. And he advised, as the master teacher, for us to take his decrees and build our life upon that. So have a blessed day. Enjoy this lesson.